liberties of our current state. Sir, I commend this bill to the House.
I call Ian Lees-Galloway.
Speaker, it's impossible when discussing anything to do with the Defence Force or veterans in this chamber not to recognise the plaques around the building and to recognise the past conflicts. Well-known names like Alamein, Crete, the River Plate, Gallipoli is just up here to my right, and over the far side there, Casino, are names that evoke strong emotions in the New Zealand psyche. They are places where, in many ways, the national identity has been forged, and increasingly in this century, New Zealanders are turning to Anzac Day in particular and other commemorations of those events as days to look towards one another as a community, to reflect on what it is to be New Zealanders and to reflect on our nation. Also look at other names like Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, which perhaps sometimes, for some people, evoke a slightly different response. Questioning government's decisions to participate in those conflicts, questioning what the reasoning was for being part of that, questioning the reason why there was an action occurring in those places in the first place. And to those people who may or may not be listening this evening, I say what we're talking about is veterans, and a veteran is a veteran. It doesn't matter what conflict they were involved in. A veteran is a person who, at the request of their government, went to a foreign land and fought on our behalf in the belief that it was in our nation's interests that they do so. Whether it be in the defence of our freedom, whether it be in the defence of our democracy, whether it be to advance our principles of peace and freedom. That is why every single veteran who has served our nation has served. And that is why it is important that we pass this legislation and that we address the situation that has been allowed to develop, that the support system for veterans in New Zealand has become outdated and outmoded. Looking down to the far corner to my left, we see Vietnam, Timor-Leste, Afghanistan, and recognition of the peacekeeping duties. That's an appropriate corner to glance at while we're discussing this, because Vietnam was the final conflict before the ACC laws and the ACC scheme was introduced in New Zealand. And then following that, we have the other conflicts that we've been involved in. And in a way, there we have two sets of veterans who deserve to be treated in an equitable fashion. But in order to do so, we require two different schemes that recognise the two different situations that those veterans face. And that's what is established here in this legislation. This legislation will do a number of things to improve the support systems for veterans, but right at the heart of it is the establishment of two schemes, one for veterans who served before ACC came into place, and another for veterans who are covered by the provisions of ACC. But as the Minister mentioned, the current law is getting close to 60 years old. And that is why, as far back as 2006, the Labour government, and in particular Labour ministers like Phil Goff and Rick Barker, looked at what needed to change in order to bring the support mechanisms for veterans into the 21st century. And it was after that initiation that the matter was referred to the Law Commission. They began their work under Sir Geoffrey Palmer in 2007, and an issues paper was developed for discussion and was brought to the House in 2008. There was then a long period, and that was the appropriate time at which time needed to be taken in order to get the recommendations right. And the Law Commission embarked on a lengthy period of consultation with various veterans groups, not least the RSA, with the families of veterans, with veterans themselves, with veterans of conflicts long ago and veterans of more recent conflicts with the New Zealand Defence Force, to talk about the future needs of veterans. And after that lengthy period of consultation and an election and change of government, the Law Commission reported back on the 1st of June 2010. So that was a 2-year period to get this right. And that was appropriate. And I hear what the Minister said was that we needed to make sure we get this right, and I suppose that was his explanation for the length of time that has taken. And I guess on this side of the House we say that a long period of time was taken to get the recommendations right. They were reported back to this House 3.5 years ago, and that 3.5 years has frankly been too long for this legislation to be introduced to Parliament. And for a period of time I was the Veterans Affairs spokesperson for the Labour Party. It was a role that I enjoyed because it gave me the opportunity to visit RSAs up and down the country. It's not a bad way to spend your time, actually. And in every single RSA that I visited, the first topic for discussion was what's happening with the Veterans Support Bill, what is happening with the Law Commission report, when is that going to come before Parliament, when is it going to be progressed, when are we going to see the change that we've been promised for so very long. So I know that veterans up and down the country will be very pleased that we finally got to this stage this evening, and I've got no doubt that many of them will come to the Select Committee to offer their views and opinions. They will, as my colleague Phil Goff pointed out, probably want to raise some questions about the difference between this draft legislation and the original recommendations in the Law Commission report. And I imagine that this will be a robust and collaborative discussion at the Select Committee, and I hope that the Select Committee has the opportunity to make amendments that will strengthen the legislation, and that we will come back to the Chamber with a much better piece of legislation, because this is not something that we need to play party politics over at all. This is something that I'm sure will have broad support around the Chamber, and it will be an opportunity for members of Parliament from all parties to work constructively towards putting in place the best possible legislation to underpin the best possible system to ensure that the needs of veterans, both of conflicts long past and of conflicts that we may need to engage in the future, are treated in an equitable fashion. We certainly support, as I've said earlier, we support the establishment of 2 separate schemes to recognise the difference between veterans who are covered and those who are not covered by ACC. We support the other extensions of coverage and the other improvements to entitlements and provisions that are held within this legislation, sir. With that, and with some final words to say that Labour wholeheartedly supports the efforts of the various veterans groups over getting on a couple of decades now to ensure that this legislative change has happened, congratulate them on ensuring that we've got to this point, and encourage everybody who has an interest in this legislation to participate in it, to come to Select Committee and make sure that we get this right for our veterans and future Defence Force personnel.
I call Jan Logie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise also to offer the Green Party's